Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to Record Breakers, a music podcast where a group of friends gather together to share music with each other, an album at a time. It's like a little book club for music. Fun time had by all. I'm PD Rave, and I'm drinking sparkling water from a witch's brew mug that I got for $4 at Aldi. So I'm already winning. And here with me is my team, my squad, my crew, my coven, as it were. We've got David.
I should have known I never had a chance when I became obsessed with the PBS television show Square One TV.
Mm-hmm. We've got Drew.
I don't even know what the fuck Square One TV is.
Mm-hmm. And of course,
it was on PBS with like the other Sesame Street shows, but it was about math.
Oh, nice.
Very late 80s, early 90s.
I hate math, so that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah, seriously.
Math, not even once.
I love math. It's a problem.
Mm-hmm. And of course, last but not least, we have our rotating fourth chair member, Alev.
Hello. I have a tiny hand.
Yes.
Everyone.
Yes. Tiny hands are fantastic. I also got panini.
You really got to hand it to her, folks.
Exactly.
Here.
There you go.
We love a joke here.
Yes. But we're here to talk about an album that is a little bit less filled with jokes. We're talking about an album this week. It's provided by Drew. Drew, what have you got for us this week? What have you gotten us into?
You know what I'm saying? Something a little bit less jokey. Well, slight adjacent concept record. I thought it'd be fun to do something from a group I will admit I was very late to. One of the members that seemed a little out of place in a group of men that all seemed out of place.
Mm-hmm.
But wanted to bring on Frank Ocean from Odd Future with his debut album, Channel Orange.
Mm-hmm. David, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
For whatever reason, Frank Ocean ended up in that blind spot of mega popular artist that I just didn't catch on to, just in that weird blind spot that I have sometimes. So I went into this blind. I knew that he did R&B with some modern flair, and I figured that was enough.
Mm-hmm. Alev, what expectations did you have coming into this album?
So I'm gonna be real. I'm kind of was on the same boat with David in regards to like I wasn't really familiar with Frank Ocean. I mean, I had a lot of friends that were into him, but I was more familiar with like the people that he was with, like with Odd Future. So when it came to like Odd Future and then the other members such as like Tyler and Earl Sweatshirt, I was like, okay, maybe it's gonna be like he might be in the similar like kind of genre or type of music that they make. So I was kind of expecting it to be kind of similar to anything that I've heard from Tyler or Earl. Or it'd be something as kind of aggressive as progressive like Odd Future, but this was totally not what I expected at all. This was like a much like very R&B centered type of album.
Yeah. I wasn't. It's one of those things. Frank Ocean is a name I've heard many times, and I think like David, I had like it just kind of missed as far as like me actually listening to his stuff. I knew he was like associated with Future. I think in various times I was aware of that or not. But I think I had a little bit more of awareness of it being more R&B than it was hip hop, or like more R&B than it was like leaning towards rap. And on that spectrum, but I wasn't sure what I was gonna get into, but I had some ideas.
Bless you.
There you go. Had some ideas, but I wasn't sure exactly what. And I was looking forward to seeing what it was going to be about. Drew, how would you describe this album musically?
So musically, this album is crazy. So like I said, it's semi sort of a concept album. The idea being flipping through channels on TV. That's why channel orange. And orange being a synesthetic response that he remembers over the first summer he fell in love, like associating that. Like Love said, there's the creative collective he was a part of, Odd Future. You know, the hip hop, a lot of people will know the hip hop artists, Tyler the Creator, Earl Sweatshirt, and all that sort of stuff. But Frank got into the group via the avenue of being a ghostwriter for a lot of folks. Before he got started, like he was helping guys like Justin Bieber and John Legend. So he had songwriting chops. And then after Odd Future started to sort of do their own solo projects and stuff like that, he crafted this. There is a almost nostalgic, hypnagogic feeling to a lot of the music that's here. It's moody, it's dark, there's mystery to it in a lot of places. There's also joy. There's some hip hop drums here and there, especially when you have guys like Tyler, and you have guys like a certain Andre Benjamin, who folks might know, helping out with tracks. You get a little bit of hip hop here and there, right? It's going to come through. But on top of it all is sort of what I think is amazing about Frank Ocean, which is this voice that is raw, that doesn't feel untrained, but feels unpolished at times, which makes it beautiful. There is a thought in cooking where something salty will elevate the sweet, right? Something that hits a little bit of the opposite will round out the edges of the good. And I think that is why I love Frank Ocean's vocals. The nostalgic feel of this record, I think, comes a lot from him dealing with some of his past and bringing them more to light. This album, if you listen close enough, the pronouns that are used throughout, especially in tracks that discuss people he is going after, seem to be a little bit flexible. And before this album came out, during the listening parties, there was a reviewer who mentioned that, and Tyler brought out a letter that wasn't a letter addressed to anybody, but more like a diary entry, sort of talking about his first love and why this was Channel Orange. And his first love was a man. So this album was sort of, and he doesn't put labels on it, but it's sort of dealing with that. He mixes in that sort of bisexuality window. And I think that what's great about this record, it being his debut, is there is a timidness in parts of it, but also like the unapologeticness of it, and letting it be soft and be mysterious, but also be him. And I think that like you kind of get all those facets in this one.
David, how would you describe this album musically?
This was the first time since I've joined Record Breakers where I'm going to use the phrase homework, because that's kind of how this felt. It felt like a labor of love on both sides for the listener and the artist. He poured a lot of his heart and soul in this, almost to the point of it being uncomfortable. But that's kind of what art is sometimes. Nothing against anything he was talking about on this album. That's all well and good. But the actual music itself it's an enjoyable album, start to finish. There's nothing really over the top offensive. There's nothing really wild. If you appreciate R&B, you're going to find a lot on this album that you like, especially modern R&B that isn't so interspersed with pop and hip hop as much as a lot of R&B can be nowadays. And I think that generally this is a solid outing from a talented dude who clearly had some things he needed to get out of his system, which is exactly what art is supposed to be.
Alev, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, if I'm being real, when I was listening to this, I kind of got the vibe that I would hear this album if I was chilling in a lounge. You know, I don't know if you, yeah, right? Like it kind of gives off that vibe, and it must be like that R&B kind of like vibe that he has with this album.
Smoky hookah bar or something will have this playing in the background.
Smoky hookah bar vibe for
some
sure.
Some spot up in Wynwood.
Yeah, it's real. I found it pretty relaxing to listen to, not gonna lie. Again, this is like, I know I've said this for like every episode, but I feel like this is something that I've really had to like think over because it's not so much a genre that I'm used to listening to. So I guess like if I were to describe it musically, it's really good. I mean, it does come off like as if when he was making this, he had a lot of like passion put into this, you know, like it almost felt kind of like a diary in a way of these emotions that he was feeling. So it's a very like soulful like sound, like for the music and lyrically.
Yeah.
Basically like that.
Yeah. Yeah, this album really kind of like does explore a lot of like that R&B sound, and it does kind of like bring you into like this very very chill vibe, but also about interjecting quite a bit of the weird here and there. It is about it is like a lot of moments of like being a kid, young person, caught up in places, caught up in moments, caught up in emotions, among like vices and things like that, processing the emotions in those times. And I think it establishes it well. It makes sense. It's a different genre than you would expect from Odd Future, but it makes sense from an attitude point of view for him to fit in with Odd Future. It's like it makes sense for him to be the R&B guy of Odd Future, if that makes any sense. I think that establishes it well. Talking about the themes and things like that. The features are fantastic. They fit in exactly where they need to be, and like the instrumentation is really cool. The beats are really cool, and like the samples and like the little sample moments and sound effects are really great. Starting, we'll get into the key tracks, but starting off with just like waking up and booting up a PlayStation and starting a game, and that kind of like just is an interesting choice for an intro, but it works. Yeah, let's talk about key tracks. Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, past the clicks of the remote, Thinking About You, that first track, and the stringy intro into like this deep bass tone, drawn out synths, Frank showing off a bit of range with like a crazy falsetto, a little bit of hip hop influence, but not much, mostly leaning on that like R&B, and almost like the same sort of feeling I get when I'm listening to like something like a Blank Banshee is the same sort of tonality I'm getting out of this one. That almost vapor wavy sort of feel, but without going into like a heavy vaporwave influence or anything like that. Super Rich Kids is actually the song that got me to pay attention to Odd Future in the first place, which is a weird back-asswards way to get into that group. I understand that. I think most would agree that Tyler is usually the gateway. Sorry, I guess.
I have to agree, not gonna lie.
Yeah, like Tyler is the first one usually people hear.
That's
and then, like,
why I have the blind spot.
Yeah.
Like going backwards, like I kind of get it now, and like I get why Tyler would be the first. But like this song like was always great. Like, and I also like the way that they flipped the paradigm. If you think about it, usually in rap music, the like R&B vocalist is the chorus. This, you put Frank on the verse and you have Earl Sweatshirt come in for the chorus, which I think is really cool. As you guys know, I like weird paradigm shifty things, which I dig. Which, again, going backwards, kind of was Odd Future's thing. Weird, a bunch of like skate punk hip hop kids. Pyramids. The 80s feel to this song I think is great. The bass line I think is great. The story that you get, likening cheating people and weird prostitution angles with Cleopatra and that sort of ideal, I think is cool. Sort of gives it like a weird almost movie quality of like seeing like that dichotomy. And then Bad Religion, I think, is the strongest vocal performance by Frank on this record. I think that the simple, drawn out story of a confession in a taxi cab, the low, like sort of simple musical track underneath it really let Frank shine on that one. So.
David, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Drew does his Drew thing. David's gonna do his David thing and pick the longest song on the album, Pyramids. I thought this was a pretty fantastic track from start to finish. Also, Super Rich Kids was all right. I enjoyed the hook. And Sweet Life, track 5, was the first song that really kind of caught my attention. So those are my 3. But I'll especially give a nod to Pyramids from start to finish. It's 9 minutes and 52 seconds, but it's a good 9 minutes and 52 seconds.
Alev, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
All right, so just like Drew and David, I'm gonna have to say that one track that I really liked was Pyramids. I thought it just sounded like super creative, like all the way through. I really liked how he used like his lyrics to kind of combine like a dancer at a strip club with Cleopatra and ancient Egypt like themes. And also that bass line and that track is just absolutely delicious. Like I loved it to death. So yeah, I think of all the tracks, that one like really stood out to me the most, and I found myself listening to that track the most of all of them, if I'm being honest.
Yeah, I think I will also give praise to Pyramids. Super Rich Friends is a song that definitely stands out with Earl Sweatshirt being a fantastic feature on it. I'll also give a shout out to Crack Rock. I just think the vibe on that one is really fitting and works really well. Pink Matter, you gotta appreciate the Majin Buu reference, and Andre 3000 is fantastic in this as a feature. And Forrest Gump is a solid like end, before you get to the end track, and a solid rejoinder, and the solid track. Forrest Gump, it just like the beat is fantastic. The kind of the instrumentation, the vocals are just really nice. And yeah. All right. So now we flip it back around. We're gonna go back around the horn, talk about some conclusive thoughts. David, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
Drew, question for you.
Mhm.
This is not the Frank Ocean album, is it?
I think if somebody was going to point to like the Frank Ocean album, it'd probably be Blonde.
Okay. Well, that answers that question, because I expected this album to kind of be. I expected this album to be the all-time great, the album that people talked about. I guess I expected this album to be more because of how, finger quotes, important it is. What we got is a pretty good R&B album from a queer black artist, which is cool. The songs all vibe from start to finish. There's really nothing that isn't quality on the album. You can definitely put this album on in the evening, regardless of who you're spending your time with, whomever that may be. I will say that I was expecting this album to be a 10, but I think I ended up getting a high 7 to low 8. But I would still recommend it as a listen.
Alette, what would be your conclusion on this album as a whole?
As a whole, I don't know. I guess the only word that I can describe this album really is just that it's a really good vibe. It's a really chill album. It has like some really good tracks on it. All of them I would say are good. So I wouldn't, knock down any points, honestly. And I think I'd recommend this to literally anybody who just wants to like branch out of like any genre that they're really stuck on. It's an easy listen. So I'd say that overall, like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. It's a good album. It's solid from front to back. It shows a lot of promise, and obviously from critical acclaim, Frank Ocean has continued to grow as an artist, and makes me want to go and listen to Blonde, which I gotta go around. There's so many albums I need to listen to, but yeah, this makes me want to go see how much he's grown in the several years since then, and hear what he has in the future. It's great vocals, good concept, does a lot of fun weird things as far as thematically, but does a lot of solid straightforward things musically, and it is a cool album to listen to. Also, you gotta appreciate when you just gonna throw in an interpolation of Mary J. Blige. Just looking for that real love. Yeah. Last but not least, Drew. How would you conclude on this album?
So for me, it was something where I knew I wanted to start dipping into this water of the weird, like, the side of alt R&B and alt hip hop and stuff like that, and start dipping into that. And I think that Frank Ocean, while definitely on the weirder side of R&B, is, I think it would be an easier entry point than Igor for some folks, and maybe harder for others. But it's something that I think there are certain records that say a lot and get overburdened with saying a lot, and I think there are certain records that say a lot but can still achieve like being super listenable, and I think this is one of those. it's something that, like, the thing I appreciate is him going for it, like him being a little bit weird and a little bit artistic and avant-garde with it. I mean, it's going to be a weird comparison, but like letting the reins go and just going for it, like after you're already known for something else, is something that can be hard to do. And sometimes you end up like Frank Ocean and the other one I think of when doing that and doing it successfully, a band like the Mars Volta, where you can just go and you just create your vision and it turns out like this. And I think that's really incredible. It's something that it isn't going to be for everybody, but I think everybody should hear a couple of tracks off of this at least once, because some people, there are listeners of our podcast that I can think of right now that probably wouldn't think they would be super into it and might even find a track themselves. They're like, oh yeah, no, I can get into that, or I can get into this one and find gold in them their hills, as it were.
Yeah, I think that about sums it up. Yeah, it's a solid album. So now we get to the main event of the evening, the moment we've all been waiting for, our Haiku Reviews, where we hit you with the 575. Let's get down to the nitty gritty.
Let's get down to the numero gritty. Hi, numero kuno.
Gritty? Like the...
Yeah, like the Flyers. Haiku numero uno. David, what is your haiku?
It's as advertised. Experimental. Sexy. Did not change my world.
Alev, what is your haiku?
All right. Music floods my brain, pouring into both my ears, floating through my skull.
My haiku: therapy is cool, always test and microdose, cocaine is boring. And last but not least,
no,
Drew.
That's The Weekend, Petey.
Yeah. Drew.
Petey's from Miami. Cocaine is everywhere.
Yes, it's all of it is connected to cocaine.
50% of their industry is coke. Like, what the fuck, man?
I can't dispute that.
Y'all haven't picked up on the fact that The Weeknd pretty much admits it.
Yes, exactly. Drew, what is
your... was doing crazy lines? Are you fucking shitting me?
Yes. Drew, what is your haiku?
Living his true life with a solo debut that shows us ocean's depth.
Yeah, those are our thoughts on Frank Ocean's Channel Orange. You can of course check it out on our Spotify playlist. Play Record Breakers, the home game. Do your due diligence and your due diligence. Follow along at home. And you have the two playlists. We have the playlist and the home game. One of them has our episodes slotted in as appropriate, and one of them has just the albums. So you can find all that, both of those links on our show notes at recordbreakerspodcast.com. On that Spotify playlist will be next week's album, and it's finally going to be provided by Alev. Alev, what do you have for us next week?
All right, so the band that we're reviewing next week is very, very near and dear to my heart. We are going to talk about the punk rock outfit Surfboard, and we are going to discuss their 2018 album Friendship Music. I love this album to death. I've listened to it many, many times, and I've been dying to discuss it on this podcast.
So
do we get Surfboard license plates?
I hope. Yes. Look forward to that. Getting a little surfboard on. Getting our Brooklyn on. Yeah. Go ahead. That'll be next week, and this is this week. And you can of course find us all over the internet. Let me play the music. You can find us all over the internet. David is at Call Me DJM. Drew is at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. Alev is at Mercury Hymn. And her tiny hands. Tiny hands. You can, of course, find us at recordbreakerspodcast.com. Recordbreakerspodcast@gmail.com is our email. We are also on TikTok now. That's the thing. I'm uploading the haikus, just the haikus onto TikTok, seeing how that gets thrown into the algorithm. Who knows? Having fun with that, and other fun clips I might decide to add there. But yeah, that's at Record Breakers Podcast on TikTok, or just look us up at Record Breakers Podcast. Yeah, check us out there. Check us out where you find podcasts. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. Rebelli TV on YouTube and on Twitch. You can catch us live for this podcast, Through the Tomes, our D&D show, and other streams, including our Witcher streams, and I'm trying to get back to doing the Mass Effect stream. I swear I will start doing the Mass Effect streams again. We will finish Mass Effect 3. Yeah, look out for that. Check out all the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos.
Live long and toodaloo.
Annyeong. Fighting. Pinkies up.
Represent. Say.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.